So welcome everybody. So this is the third session of a 3-session program on the Abhidharma of the comprehensive manual of Abhidharma. And now I'm going to share the screen so we can continue where we left off yesterday. Let me just close down some unneeded windows. Oops, delete this. Okay, do you see the image of the comprehensive manual here?
Yes,
with determination of rebirth?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay, so we've been doing the chapter 5, which deals with what's called the process-freed types of consciousness, primarily with the nature of death and rebirth. And now we come to we have a few sections to finish up this chapter. Then we'll go into the section on material form. So this section here, number 40, deals with the determination of rebirth. Okay, so first, yeah. I think it's easier to take the explanation from the guide together with the diagram or the table, since we go into more detail here. And in this case, we start from the top and work down. So we have determination of rebirth. It differs in some cases between, on the one hand, worldlings and noble disciples. It differs significantly between worldlings and noble disciples. Okay, so I will explain mainly the procedure for worldlings and then just briefly the procedure for noble disciples still in training. Of course, for those who attain arhatship, there's no rebirth, so there's nothing to say. Okay, so now we start with beings in the immaterial realms. So those in the immaterial realms may develop the immaterial jhana or the immaterial absorption that corresponds to their own level of rebirth or a higher attainment, but not a lower attainment. And so when they pass away, they may be reborn on the same plane or on a higher plane, but not on a lower jhanic plane. But if they fall away from their jhanic attainment, then they are reborn in the sense sphere plane by the power of their access samadhi, access concentration, and then they take rebirth with one of the 3 rooted sense sphere resultants. That is, their rebirth consciousness will have the 3 roots of non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. And we could see this in the table that those
Bhante, could you fully expand your window?
Yes. I'm not getting any.
Sorry, Bhante, could you just make your window full screen so it covers your whole screen?
Okay, let's see how to do that.
Well, you can just make it bigger, just stretch it, because it's just not quite the whole script. That's
Okay.
Thank you so much, Bhante.
And let me. Is the table visible down below?
Yes,
Bhante.
Bhante. Yes.
Okay. So those beings in the highest immaterial plane of existence, the plane of neither perception nor non-perception, they will take rebirth either back into the plane of neither perception nor non-perception, or if they don't maintain their meditative absorption, then they'll fall away from the immaterial plane of existence and come back to the sense sphere plane of existence with a rebirth consciousness with 3 roots. So that means that in terms of their plane of rebirth, it's 5 to 11 from planes 5 to 11. So they could be reborn back in the human plane or in any of the 6 sense sphere heavenly planes. And when they come back into these planes, they will have 3 good roots, 3 beautiful roots. Okay, then as we go down to the next lower immaterial plane of existence, so the beings in the state of nothingness, plane of nothingness, they might again attain the base of nothingness and take rebirth there, or they can develop the attainment of neither perception nor non-perception, and then take rebirth in the realm of neither perception nor non-perception. Or if they fail to maintain their meditative attainment, again, they come back to the sense sphere realm, either to a human rebirth or rebirth in any of the 6 sense sphere heavens. Similarly, beings of infinite consciousness, they can go higher. They could remain either at the same level or go up to level 30 or go up to level 31 in their next existence, or they can fall down into the human realm or the sense sphere heavens. And the same principle for the beings in the plane of infinite space. They either remain at the same level, go up to any of the 3 higher levels, or come down to human existence or the sense sphere heavens. But they don't fall away from the immaterial plane down to the lower, to the realms of bad rebirth. They don't go down there directly, but once they come back to the human realm, if they go astray and get led into unwholesome courses of conduct, then from the human realm, they can fall into the lower states of rebirth, into the bad destinations. Okay, then remember in the fine material realm, there's one plane called the realm of the non-percipient beings, beings who don't have any consciousness at all, no consciousness, no perception, no volitional activities. So they're not creating any new karma. So when they pass away from this realm, then they take rebirth into the sense sphere plane with a sense sphere resultant having either 2 roots or 3 roots. And that means, since they'll have at minimum 2 roots, that they have to be in the human realm or in the sense sphere heavens. Because if one takes rebirth in the lower realms, the lower planes, the unfortunate destinations, the rebirth consciousness in those realms is only the investigating consciousness accompanied by equanimity. So they will take rebirth with any of the sense sphere beautiful resultants, the 8 sense sphere beautiful resultants with 2 roots, non-greed and non-hatred, or 3 roots, non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. Okay, then the beings elsewhere in the fine material realm, they may be reborn either in an immaterial realm if they gain the immaterial jhanas, so they can rise up from the fine material realm into the immaterial realm, or they can take rebirth anywhere else within the fine material realm if they maintain a fine material jhana, or if they don't maintain their jhana, then they will take rebirth into the sense sphere plane with either a 2-rooted or 3-rooted rebirth consciousness. So that means that they will take rebirth with any of the 8 great sense sphere resultants. It's a puzzle to me. I don't know the answer why the beings in the immaterial plane can take rebirth in a higher immaterial plane, either the same level or a higher one, but not a lower one. But the beings in the fine material plane, it seems, can take rebirth anywhere else within the fine material plane, lower or higher, or else they drop away completely from the fine material and immaterial plane and come back into either the human realm or the sense sphere heavens. But again, you don't pass away from the fine material realm directly into any of the 4 bad destinations. You can pass away from the fine material realm to the human realm, then commit unwholesome karma, and then get reborn in a bad destination. So the same guideline to rebirth occurs throughout the fine material plane. Okay, then those who pass away in the sensuous plane with 3 roots may take rebirth in any plane. Since the sense sphere being with 3 roots can perform any type of karma. So we could see here, taking the Parinimita Vasavati Devas as an example. When they pass away, they can take rebirth anywhere else within the sense sphere plane. Or if they develop the jhanas, then they can take rebirth in the fine material plane, or if they develop the immaterial attainments, they can take rebirth in the immaterial plane. Okay, so that applies to all of the beings in the sense sphere heavens, and also applies to human beings. So human beings basically can take rebirth in any of the realms of existence, from the lowest, the hell realms, all the ways up to the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. Okay, then those who pass away from the from the bad destinations, they can take rebirth in any place within the sense sphere realm of existence. They can be reborn elsewhere within the bad destinations, or else they can rise up to the human realm or into the sense sphere heavenly realms. I guess they could have some reserve of wholesome karma from an earlier life, and through that earlier good karma, they could rise even from a hell to take rebirth in a heavenly realm. So those who pass away with 2 roots and no roots are born only in the sensual plane. Yeah. So from the bad destinations, one can go any place within the sense, in any place among the sense sphere realms of existence. So that's for worldlings, those who have not reached the stage of stream entry or higher. In the case of trainees, this is stream enterers, once returners, non-returners. They can go either higher or they can go either at the if they're going to take rebirth, they will take rebirth either at the same level or at a higher level, but they don't regress at all, and they always take rebirth with a 3-rooted rebirth consciousness, because without 3 roots, it's impossible to have attained the noble path and fruit, and so their rebirth consciousness will always have 3 roots. So basically, they're reborn either in the same plane or in a superior plane. And then those who have reached arhatship do not take rebirth in any plane after death. And then if you want to follow this in detail, then you go to table 5.7. And then I think just we have the concluding section just on the continuity of consciousness. Okay, so this is the primary text. So it says, for those who have taken rebirth from the moment immediately following the cessation of the rebirth linking consciousness, that same type of consciousness, that same type of citta will continue on in the mode of the bhavanga. So first, the rebirth consciousness arises just for one mind moment, and then that same type of citta will continue for a succession of cittas in the mode of the bhavanga. And then, as long as there is no occurrence of an active cognitive process, then the bhavanga will flow on like the stream of a river until the occurrence of the death consciousness. And so that is the bhavanga, which is so called because it is considered the factor of existence. The word for factor is anga, and existence is bhava. So that which is the factor that maintains the continuity of existence is called the bhavanga. And then at death, the death consciousness occurs and ceases. And then following the death consciousness, another rebirth linking consciousness arises, followed by the bhavanga, and continues to flow on. And thus the succession of deaths and rebirths continues like the wheel of a cart turning over and over. So according to the Abhidharma commentaries, they say that the rebirth linking consciousness is followed by 16 moments of the bhavanga. Then after that 16th bhavanga, then a mind door adverting consciousness arises. and it's followed by a Javana process in which the dominant factor is the attachment to the new existence. So that's a kind of instinctive attachment to the new existence. So that is the first cognitive process in the new existence, that attachment to the new existence. Then after that initial active Javana process, then there'll be more Bhavanga Chittas, more active Chittas occurring until eventually the being, if it's a human rebirth, the being comes out into the world, and then a whole bundle of active types of consciousness occur. So in this way, the stream of consciousness flows on from conception until death, from death to new birth, revolving like the wheel of a cart. And so then just the concluding verse tells us that when the wise understand this impermanence of existence, then they discipline themselves over a long period, cut off the fetter of attachment, and realize the deathless state, that is Nibbana, the state of peace. And that's the end of the 5th chapter. So maybe we could take some questions arising from.
Yes, Bhante. There are
okay.
2 or 3. Yeah. The first one is how can a person who's attained Arupajanas be reborn in a higher plane than the jhana he or she has achieved?
I would say that it's just my speculation that the being in a formless, in an immaterial jhana will know of the existence of higher states of immaterial absorption, and then form an aspiration to attain that state, and then do the meditative work needed to attain it.
Thank you, Bhante. There are teachings that say that the summit of existence, the highest immaterial planes, are actually a prison, a dead end, and they're not to be encouraged. Is that something that you see in the Theravada Abhidharma? It does appear in other Abhidharmas.
Well, what is said, I've heard this orally, I don't recall seeing it in any text, that if one hasn't yet attained stream entry, one should try to avoid rebirth into the immaterial plane of existence. And the reason for that is because in order to attain stream entry, one has to listen to the Dharma, to hear the Dharma. So if a person is reborn in the immaterial plane of existence, then they don't have the ear faculty, which is a material faculty. And so they have no chance of listening, of hearing the Dharma in the formless, in the immaterial plane of existence. And so they'll spend 60,000, 84,000 aeons absorbed in peace and tranquility, but the lifespan comes to an end there, and then they take rebirth elsewhere. And since they haven't learned the Dhamma by listening, or they haven't attained stream entry, then they haven't yet entered the irreversible path to liberation.
Thank you, Bhante. That clarifies that.
Yeah, but it's not the case that if you're reborn in the immaterial plane of existence, that forever you're incapable of gaining liberation. It's just that within that plane of existence, there's no opportunity. But when one takes rebirth, say back into the human realm, if one has suitable affinities with the Buddha Dharma, then one could meet a Buddha or Buddhist disciples, learn the Dhamma, and then gain insight and attain stream entry.
Thank you, Bhante. Then there are a number of questions about the death process of an Arahant. In particular, what happens to the Bhavanga? Why? Because if there's no Bhavanga, how does an Arahant have any consciousness at all? What is the death process there that doesn't cause rebirth? How does that happen?
Yeah, in the case of the Arahant, the Bhavanga, with the passing away of the Arahant, the Bhavanga comes to an end. So then there's no rebirth of the Arhat. The Arhat enters or attains the unconditioned Nibbana state. And so there's no continuity of the consciousness in the nirvanic state or nibbanic state.
So is there no bhavanga during the life of an arhat?
Oh yes, certainly. Yeah, the bhavanga continues during the remainder of the Arhat's life. So whenever the Arhat is not, when the Arhat doesn't have an active cognitive process occurring, then they'll go into the bhavanga, countless times during the day, and then when they go into deep dreamless sleep.
I see. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, because that's the bhavanga is necessary to maintain the continuity of the individual.
Then there's a question here. The Buddha was born as a human. Does that mean above the human realm can also be born in the human realm? I think you did answer that, but I'm just clarifying.
The question.
The Buddha was born as a human from the Tushta heaven.
Yeah.
Does that mean that those above the human realm can also be born in the human realm?
Oh yeah, that's what is indicated very clearly in that chart.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, the beings from any of the other higher realms of existence, when they pass away, they can be reborn back into the human realm.
Right. And then finally, I've heard of a frog who listened to the Dharma under the roof of a cowherd while the cowherd was listening to the Dharma, and when it passed away, it was reborn as a frog deity in the heavens. Is this a very rare occurrence?
I don't know how literally one should take that. It seems to be a kind of maybe a preacher's legend that got absorbed into the Visuddhimagga, and then it's mentioned as a fact. Okay, so the story goes that a cowherd was listening to the Buddha preach, and I think he had a kind of staff with a forked end by his side, and a frog was also in the grass by his foot, and he just moved his stick and it crushed the head of the frog. And since the frog was listening to the Buddha preach and was developed a kind of feeling of confidence and trust in the Buddha because of the soothing sound of the Buddha's voice, and then the frog felt devotion towards the Buddha. And so when the frog expired, it was reborn in one of the probably the Tavatimsa Deva world. In a way, it doesn't quite violate what's said in the scheme, since the scheme does say that a being can pass away from the animal realm and take rebirth into the human or the heavenly realms. But it sounds a little bit exaggerated, at least to my mind, to speak of the frog passing away as such and taking rebirth in the heavenly realm. But maybe it's possible, I don't know.
And then Bhante, there's a question here. Do beings in a higher state, for example, the Deva realm, have mindfulness and clear comprehension to go to a higher plane? Are there teachers there?
Are there
teachers in these higher planes? I mean, how do they do this?
Well, certainly beings, I would assume, in these heavenly realms will, at least many of them will have mindfulness and clear comprehension. And those would be the ones who are able to maintain sort of their discipline and maybe their practice in these heavenly realms. And in this way, they will progress further. Or if they come back to the human realm, they will have still maintaining the capacities for mindfulness and clear comprehension. And so they can maintain, or they can develop fairly quickly and successfully in their practices as human beings. But it's said that what often happens in the heavenly realms, because the pleasures are so intense and so intoxicating, that the beings become infatuated with the sense pleasures there, and then they lose their mindfulness and clear comprehension and get swept away by sensual enjoyment. And then from the heavenly realms, if they pass into the human realm, they might become very successful, wealthy people, but with without affinities with the Dharma, or else because of the sensual enjoyment, they might even fall into the lower planes of existence.
Right. And then there's a question about Arahants here again. What does Bhante mean when he says that Arahants do not take rebirth in any plane after death? Do they just cease to exist? If so, does that mean they will never become Buddhas?
Yeah, this is where there's difference in the teachings of the schools. So there are schools that teach 3 final vehicles, and the Theravada school belongs to that line of thought. And so that holds that there are 3 ways to attain the final liberation, to final nibbana, either as a disciple arhat or as a pratyeka Buddha, which is another type of being that attains enlightenment without the guidance of others. And then the third way is as a fully enlightened Buddha. So from that perspective, all 3 enlightened individuals are alike with respect to their enlightenment and liberation. And when they pass away, they all equally enter the unconditioned nirvana or nibbana element without any residue remaining. So that is the perspective of probably all of the early Buddha schools, what is sometimes called the schools of the sectarian period. But then in a later period, some of the Mahayana systems hold that there's one final vehicle, which is the Bodhisattva vehicle leading to full Buddhahood. And so they will say that, or hold that even the Arhat disciples and the Pratyeka Buddhas, though they enter into a kind of nirvana, but it's not the absolutely final nirvana, but from their superior, they take rebirth into subtle pure lands, and there they enter the Bodhisattva vehicle, which leads them to final Buddhahood.
Thank you, Bhante. And then
so that is a position that becomes quite prominent especially in the Saddharma Pundarika Sutra, known as the Lotus Sutra.
Yes. And then there's a question here. Is the term bhavanga mentioned in the suttas? I asked this yesterday. Are there any examples of it that you could give us?
It's not mentioned as in this sense in the suttas. I'm not sure whether or not it occurs in the suttas in another sense. But it's this idea of an underlying substratum consciousness. Maybe that idea can be seen in the suttas, but the term bhavanga doesn't occur there with reference to that substratum consciousness.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. And then, do all Samasambuddhas only come from Tushta heaven? Is that the final destination of the Bodhisattva prior to Buddhahood for every Buddha?
I believe so, the way it's presented in the text.
All right. And then finally, a question about animals. Can humans help domestic animals reduce negative karma so they can be reborn in a human realm?
I mean, I don't have personal experience of that. I would say that maybe what a human being could do with an animal, if you have a Buddha shrine room, you bring the animal in and let it rest there and hold it up to see the Buddha. You can recite maybe the 3 refuges so that it goes into the ear channel of the animal and get registered into the mind stream of the animal. Perhaps those methods would work, but I don't have personal experience.
Okay, that's all the questions.
Maybe will be a good form of right livelihood for a new generation of Buddhists to become animal trainers, preparing animals for fortunate rebirth in the next life. I'm sure one could do a very brisk business with an online enterprise like that.
I'm sure you've heard the story of the Dalai Lama's goat, where a goat tried to get into the Kala chakra and they wouldn't let it in. Then it found a ticket and came with the ticket in its mouth.
No, I didn't hear
Yeah.
that story.
Yeah, so yeah, then they let it in. Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway,
Is that a factual story, or
that's a factual story. Yes,
how did the goat get the ticket?
it found a ticket stub lying on the ground, so it came back with the ticket stub in its mouth.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
Okay. So now we will pass on now to the next chapter. And I'll probably have to do this a bit briskly and briefly. This is the chapter on matter, material form, or in Pali, rupa. So this is chapter 6 of the comprehensive manual called Rupa Sangaha Vibhaga. So it's the analysis of rupa, material form. And if you remember, going back to the very beginning of the manual, the text speaks about the 4 kinds of ultimate realities, or paramatta dhammas. Chitta, which is mind; Chaitasika, the mental factors associated with mind; and then the third is rupa, materiality. And so far through our previous classes, we've covered Chitta in great detail. In chapter 2, and to some extent in chapter 3, we dealt with Chaitasika, the Chaitasikas, and now we're going to be dealing with rupa, the third, and at the end of this, the 4th ultimate reality, Nibbana. Okay, so now we'll take the enumeration of material phenomena. And the briefest way this is treated in the Theravada Abhidharma system, 28 rupa dhammas, or material phenomena, are enumerated. Probably different Abhidharma systems will have different lists of material factors, just like they have different lists of the associated mental factors. But all of them will recognize a distinction that derives from the Sutta Pitaka itself. The most basic distinction is between the 4 primary elements, which are called in Pali the Mahabhutas, here translated as the great essentials. And then there is a broad category of material phenomena that are derived from or dependent upon the 4 primary elements. So that's the broad distinction of the 28 types of material phenomena. And so here we just have that distinction. Okay, so we have the 4 primary elements: earth, water, fire, and air, which we're going to consider just below. So these are the fundamental constituents of matter. And then this is an important point, that they are inseparable. So they always occur together. So even though we use the common designations, if we see a stone or soil or wood, we say that's the earth element. If we see a stream, a pond, or river, we say that's the water element. If we see a fire burning or feel heat, we say that's the fire element. And what is surrounding us and what blows from time to time, we say that's the air element. But those are only the conventional terms. But as we'll see, the 4 primary elements actually signify what we would call 4 fundamental properties of matter, which are inseparably joined together inseparably in various combinations. And they enter into the composition of all material substances. And then we have 24 derived material phenomena, which we will come to shortly. Okay, then this is an important distinction, which I'm going to come to just below, between of the distinction among these 28 types of material phenomena between, it's very hard to translate these Pali words. So the Pali expression here is nibbana rupa, which means literally something actually produced, what is actually produced or actually existent material phenomena. And it said that these are things that possess actual natures of their own. And these are the types of material phenomena that are taken as the objects when doing the contemplation of material form in the practice of insight meditation. These are the material phenomena that one actually contemplates. The other classes, these are more abstract in nature, as we'll see, and these are called anibbana rupa, non or non-actual material phenomena, or not concretely produced material phenomena. Yeah, well, I have the chart for a broad overview, which I'll refer to as we go through the explanation. Okay, so first the text is going to consider the concretely produced matter. And these are divided into 7 subgroups. So we have the 4 primaries, the 5 types of sensitive material, which I'll explain shortly. Then the objective matter, the material phenomena that are the objects of the senses. So in theory, we could enumerate 5 of these: visible form, sound, smell, taste, and the tactile object. But according to the Theravada Abhidharma, the tactile object actually consists of 3 of the primary elements themselves. Let me base it on the guide where we have some more explanation. Okay, so all of these taken together, so those are the 18 kinds of material phenomena that are called concretely produced material phenomena, which are the types of matter to be comprehended by insight. Okay, so let us now consider the 4 primary elements, which are also called dhatus, in the sense that they bear their own distinct natures. Okay, this we don't need. Okay, each of these primary elements has its distinctive characteristic, function, and so forth. So the earth element has the characteristic of hardness or solidity or resistance. But we can actually posit maybe a spectrum or continuum of hardness and softness. So where the earth element is more prominent, then we experience hardness. Where the earth element is more recessive, then we experience softness. But both are modes in which the earth element is experienced by the sense of touch. And the function of the earth element is to serve as a foundation for the other primary elements and for all of the other types of derived matter. Okay, then we come to the water element, which can be represented more abstractly as the property of fluidity or liquidity. I think liquidity has a meaning in economics, which doesn't quite apply here. So this is the material, according to the Abhidharma and the commentaries, this is the material factor that makes the different particles of matter, the particles of earth element, cohere, and that binds them together and prevents them from being scattered. And so it's manifested, the water element is manifested as the holding together, the binding together of material phenomena. And according to the Abhidharma, the Theravada Abhidharma, the water element, unlike the other three primary elements, cannot be physically sensed, but has to be known by inference from the cohesion of observed matter. So the fact that material particles bind together, from that we can infer that the water element is present. And I think maybe the formulators of the Abhidharma came to this conclusion from observing the way maybe the Indian cooks will make roti or chapati. This would be the flatbread. You take the wheat flour, put it out on the on the um, on the board, and then if the wind blows, it will blow the flour away. But you sprinkle the flour with water, and then you knead it, and then the wheat flour will bind together. And so they come to the inference that it is the water element that is responsible for the binding together of the particles of wheat flour. But they say that you can't actually physically experience by touch the water element. But I have to confess, this is a point in which I hold an extremely heretical position that came to me one day when I was living in Sri Lanka, and we would have, the weather there was quite hot, and we have outside a line for hanging the clothes after we wash them. And so I hang my robe out on the line. And then after an hour or so, I went out to see whether the robe had dried. And I touched the robe, and I found the robe is still wet. And then it occurred to me, hey, according to the Abhidhamma, I shouldn't be able to experience wetness. And some of the Abhidhamma teachers will say that when you experience wetness, what you're actually feeling is coolness. But the robe was out in the hot sun, so that the robe was quite warm. But I still felt wetness, which could not be reduced to coolness. So I came to the conclusion that you can experience the water element as wetness. Okay. Fire element has the characteristic of heat. And again, we could posit a spectrum here between heat and cold. So those are the modes in which the fire element is experienced. But actually, as you get colder and colder, then the fire element is less prominent until probably if you ever reach absolute zero, though I don't know if that's possible, then the fire element would be completely absent. And it's said that the function of the fire element is to mature or ripen material phenomena. Then there's the air element, which is the property of distension, of expansion. And by expanding and contracting, the air element is the principle of motion and pressure, and its function is to cause motion in other material phenomena. And so it's said that even when we are walking, the movement of the legs, or even when I'm sitting here moving my arm to point to this or that, that motion is due to the activity of the air element. And then we experience the air element through touch as pressure. And then the four elements are always joined together. And when they're joined together, then among the four of them, the earth element serves as the foundation. The water element holds them together, binds them together. The fire element imparts to them some degree of heat, and in that way sort of ripens them or matures them. And the air element is responsible for their expansion, or under other conditions, compression. Okay, so that takes us through the four primary elements. And now we come to the derived material phenomena. And probably the most important types of derived material phenomena are what are called the sensitive material phenomena, in Pali, pasada rupa. And this is what we conventionally call eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. But those terms, from a technical perspective, refer not to the gross sensory organs, which are the support for the sensitive material phenomena, but rather it refers to a particular type of matter located within those sense organs, which is sensitive to the corresponding type of object. And so we have what is conventionally called the eye, is called in the Abhidharma is called the composite eye. So it's a compound of various material phenomena, but the most important of those is the eye sensitivity. So that is the sensitive substance, maybe in the retina, that registers light and color, and that serves as the base and door for eye consciousness. Similarly, ear sensitivity is a subtle substance found within the inner ear, which registers sounds and serves as the base and door for ear consciousness. And then the nose sensitivity is a subtle substance that can register smells. Tongue sensitivity, diffused over the tongue, registers taste. And body sensitivity is extended throughout the organic body, inside and outside, and it registers tactile sensations. Okay, then we have the objective phenomena, or simply the objects, the sensory objects. So these are the 5 sense fields that serve as the objective or the objects of the corresponding types of sense consciousness. And the of the 4 objects, I'm sorry, of the 5 sense objects, 4 of them are considered types of derived or secondary matter: visible form, sound, odor, and taste. But as I said earlier, the tangible object is constituted only by 3 of the primary elements: earth element experienced as hardness or softness, the fire element experienced as heat or cold, and the air element experienced as pressure or expansion and contraction. But the water element, as the principle of cohesion, is considered not included in the tactile object, but is said to be known by inference. Okay, continuing on, then we come to what are called the material phenomena of sex, or maybe we could say sexual determination. And so this is the type of material phenomena that determines one's features as being either feminine or masculine. So these are called the 2 faculties of femininity and masculinity. In Pali, itindriya, the female faculty, or purisindriya, the male faculty. So these faculties have respectively the characteristics of either the female sex or the male sex, and their function is to show femininity or masculinity. And maybe that could be seen as the determinants of the sexual structure of the body, whether female features or male features. And maybe in the case of probably most people, perhaps there's some combination of the two in different proportions. Okay, then the next derived material phenomena is the heart base, which I've spoken about earlier. And this is not the physical heart organ itself, but it's supposed to be a subtle type of material substance in the region of the heart that serves as the material support for the mind element and the mind consciousness element. That is for all of the chittas except for the sensory chittas, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and mind consciousness. For all of the other types of chittas arise on the basis of the heart base. Yeah, so it's said to be found in dependence on the blood inside the heart, and it's maintained by the life faculty. Then the life faculty is another faculty, well, it's the faculty of vitality, which maintains the life of a living body. So it has the characteristic of maintaining the coexistent kinds of matter at the moment of their presence, that makes them occur. When death takes place, the life faculty is extinguished. In fact, we could say that death is the extinguishing or cutting off of the life faculty, and then all the other constituents of the body then lose their vitality and turn just into inorganic material substance. And then the last type of concretely existent matter is edible food, which is not just the gross food itself, but it is the components in the gross food that that provide nutrition to the body. So it's identified with something called oja, which can be understood as nutritive essence. So it's the nutritional substance within the gross edible food, and its function is to sustain the physical body and to fortify the body. So we have here 18 types of material phenomena, and these are the 18 types that are called concretely produced matter, also called matter possessing intrinsic nature, because each has a distinct nature. And this is also the type of matter. It's called concretely produced matter because these types are produced by such conditions as karma. And this is the matter to be comprehended by insight. So in the process of insight meditation, one is to investigate these types of matter and perceive them by way of the three characteristics. Okay, now we come to the other types of matter, which are called non-concretely produced matter. And as we'll see, these have a somewhat, even a more derivative nature than the types of derived matter that we've just gone through. Again, I will use the explanatory guide where we have more details. And let us go up. Okay, so these types are designated non-concretely produced matter because they do not arise directly from the four main causes, but exist as attributes or modes of the concretely produced matter. So one here is the space element, which in the Theravada Abhidharma, the term space element doesn't refer to what we would call the universal, all-pervasive space, but rather the word space is used in a narrower sense as the empty region between material objects. So it's the void region that delimits and separates objects and groups of material phenomena. enabling them to be perceived as distinct. So it has the characteristic of delimiting matter and enables the material objects. It displays the boundaries of material objects. So examples given of the space element would be the space in the, say, in the mouth, the empty spaces in the ears, the empty space within the belly, the space of the intestines, and say the spaces in a cup that enables me to fill it with water. I have to say that maybe the formulators of the Abhidharma didn't take account of the fact that even these so-called empty spaces are filled with air, molecules of air. But maybe when you get into outer space where there are no particles of air, there you could see the space element most distinctly. Okay, after the space element come two types of material phenomena called, in Pali the word used is vinyati, very difficult to translate into English. So maybe I picked up from other translators the word intimation. This is in Sanskrit vijñapti. Maybe another rendering might be communication or means of communication. And it refers to that by means of which one communicates one's ideas, feelings, attitudes, and so forth to another. And so there are two types of intimation, bodily and vocal. So bodily intimation, this is said to be a special modification in the air element originated by consciousness, which causes the body to move in ways that reveal one's intentions. So let us say somebody says something that I like, then I hold up a finger like this to show I agree, I approve. So this is an act of bodily intimation. I like it. So I'm expressing my idea, agreement, through the movement of the body. And what mobilizes the body, according to the ancient Indian physiology or ancient Buddhist physiology, is the air element. In this case, it's originated by consciousness because my mind gives the instruction, raise your thumb to show you agree. If I don't like somebody says something, I put the thumb down like this, and it means I disagree. So I'm showing disapproval by a bodily action. Or maybe even facial expressions could be considered bodily intimation. So somebody says something pleasant, I smile in that case, even though it occurs without deliberation, but just spontaneously, but it's expressing, it's a bodily movement, which is expressing a conscious state of pleasure, enjoyment. If somebody says something that upsets me, then I might show a grim expression or grit my teeth. That's a bodily intimation expressing displeasure. And then we have verbal or vocal intimation. That is the uttering, that which mobilizes or motivates speech, which mobilizes or activates the verbal, the apparatus of speech to express one's ideas or feelings by way of speech. That is verbal intimation or vocal intimation. So it displays intention either by bodily movement, or by verbal expression. So we have two types of communicating or intimating material phenomena. Then we have the next group are mutable material phenomena. So this includes the two types of intimation, but it also has three other types of phenomena, which are called lightness, malleability, and wieldiness. And perhaps each of these is a spectrum. Maybe lightness might be a spectrum ranging from physical lightness, so kind of buoyancy of the body on one end, to heaviness of the body at the other end. Malleability is the absence of rigidity or stiffness or hardness. So maybe there's a range here from malleability to rigidity in matter. And then wieldiness, again, is a characteristic of wieldiness of being favorable to bodily action. And its function is to dispel unwieldiness. So maybe you could think of a ballet dancer, or maybe let's take a master of hatha yoga who can move the body and bend and twist the body in ways that we consider unimaginable. That would be an extraordinary display of wieldiness of the body. Okay, then going on, finally, we have a group called the characteristics of matter. Okay, so we have four components within this group: production, continuity, decay, and impermanence. Okay, of these, it said both production and continuity are terms for the arising or birth of matter or production of matter, but they differ in that the one called production, upachaya, is the first arising of a material process, the initial launching of the process, while continuity is the repeated production or genesis of material phenomena in the same material process. Maybe here we have an example given in the case of a human existence. So at conception, the arising of the body, sex determination, and the heart base is production, first arising, while after they first arise, then they continue to be produced continuously throughout life. So that would be continuity. Or to take an example from inorganic matter, let us say you have a candle, then you light the wick of the candle. So the first arising of the flame would be production. And then the flame is always consuming new piece of the wick, new particles of the wax. So that would be the continuity of in the case of the flame. So it's new material phenomena are constantly being produced, but in a continuous process, each succeeding the other. Okay, then decay has the characteristic of the maturing or aging of the material phenomena. So we could see this most clearly in the case of a human existence with the graying of the hair or the balding of the skull, the wrinkling of the skin, the um, falling out of the teeth, the loss of one's strength, and so on. So those would be instances of maturing or aging of material phenomena. And then the last one, impermanence, is the complete breaking up and destruction of the material phenomena. I have to say that some of the classifications of material phenomena are a bit strange to our contemporary ways of thinking. Like we think of material phenomena by way of cells, molecules, atoms, subatomic particles, all the ways down to quarks. But this is the way the ancient Indian Buddhists classified material phenomena. Yeah, this is just a summing up first. I don't know whether I should take if there are maybe just some short questions that need clarification here. Anything unclear about what I just said? Otherwise, I would want to get into the next section.
There are a couple.
Okay.
Firstly, just a general question. Do you think this classification of material phenomena is meant to be a complete description of the world? Is it meant to encompass all materiality? Is that the idea of it? That might explain why it's got such a mixed bag of things.
Maybe that's why that was probably the intention of the ancient Indian Buddhists who classified matter in this way.
Right.
Probably based on their own, my guess is that it would have been based primarily upon meditative investigations rather than by sort of external experimentation, the way the early Western scientists proceeded. So even when they speak about lightness, malleability, and wieldiness as properties of matter, they were probably basing this on the way they experience the body in different states of meditation. Like if the body was light, malleable, and wieldy, it would be conducive to quick samadhi and quick functioning of insight. Whereas if the body was heavy, rigid, and unwieldy, then it would be obstructive to their meditative progress.
Yes. So that leads to a second question. Is it possible that modern readers are predicting?
There was some noise. There was some.
Sorry, Bhante. Is it possible that the term rupa may not be referring to matter at all, but may be referring to sense input? i.e., we're projecting on this ancient text a modern conception of the world as materially separate from us, whereas when one looks at these terms, they appear to be sense elements. They're not really separate from sensation.
Actually, that's a very, very good observation. Yeah, because as far as the Buddhism, what Buddhism is concerned with is not really understanding the quote material world as objectively existent within its own right, but it's concerned with understanding, let us say, the nature of experience. And so there would be within experience, maybe we could call this a physical component, a physical side of experience, as well as an internal cognitive side of experience. So maybe we could say that these phenomena represent the physical side of experience rather than seeing them as constituents of the material world. Yeah, that was a very helpful observation. I would actually agree quite with that.
Yeah, it might be worth saying, of course, that there is no such thing as the physical side of experience, in as much as it's always inferential. You never, ever have experience of anything other than sense input. You cannot experience anything other than sense input. Everything else is inferred from sense input.
Yeah, so I would say that I use the word physical to refer to an aspect of sensory experience.
Okay, yes.
And then matter, the term matter as referring to something that lies outside or beyond sensory, the domain of sensory experience. So I say that this could be describing the physical side of experience, but not positing a material world outside that that experiential domain.
Thank you, Bhante. Then what great element is light, as in terms of vision? It doesn't seem to fall within them at all.
Light, I would say light probably would be classified within the category of visible form.
But in terms of the four great elements?
No, light wouldn't be within the four elements, but light would be amongst the objective phenomena within visible form.
Sorry, if I could just press you there. So I thought the four great elements were the basis from which all the other things were derived. Doesn't that mean light has to find a base within the four great elements?
I see. Okay, I see. Yeah, a little problem. I don't know how to explain it.
Thank you, Bhante. And then finally, do higher beings in sensuous realms have the same 28 types of matter as human beings, or are these for human realm only?
Yeah, based on what we've covered so far, what we would say is that in the sense sphere realm and the form realm, at least so, let's say in the sense sphere heavens, I would guess all of these material phenomena are present. In the form realm or the fine material realm, there would be no nose sensitivity, tongue sensitivity, or body sensitivity, and no smell, taste, and, well, there'll be the three elements, but not in the mode of a tactile object, because those beings don't have nose, tongue, or body sensitivity. And in the fine material realm, there will be no sexual differentiation, no femininity, no masculinity. I guess they have a heart base and life faculty. I think they'll have nutriment. Yeah, and then in the formless or immaterial realm, of course, all of these are absent.
Thank you, Bhante. Then there are a couple of questions about the final classification, the characteristics of matter.
Yeah.
And these two are, in modern material ideas, there's a cycle of energy, and energy can't be destroyed or created. How does this relate to the ancient theory? Do they have the same sort of idea?
I don't see that they've ever considered that issue.
And then finally, there's a question about, is there a stream of Dhammas, the Dhamma Santana in the Theravada in Abhidharma, or is that just in the Savastivada?
No, definitely. All Dhammas are occurring in the form of, he used a Sanskrit word, which is the same in Pali, santana. Santana means a continuity, a continuous succession. And that's exactly the way both the mind occurs as a citta santana, a continuity of one citta following another, and material phenomena also occur as rupa santana or rupa santati, continuous succession of material phenomena, one giving rise, each material phenomena arises, perishes, and gives rise to the next one.
Is there a discussion within the Theravada anywhere of the duration of a Dhamma in the stream? I know that does figure in later thought, but does that occur within?
Oh yeah, that plays very prominent role. And there was a passage on that we came across, I think it was at the beginning of chapter 4 on the cognitive process, where it's said that material phenomena occur 17 times more slowly than mental phenomena, or mental phenomena, 17 mental phenomena, 17 cittas occur in the time that it takes for one material phenomena to arise and pass away. So that is why within a cognitive process, the I arises cognizing a material object, and the I base and the visible form endure for the length of 17 mind moments. So that is why it takes 17 mind moments to constitute a cognitive process.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. Then there are a couple of questions about the higher realms. Could I just ask you those? I suppose we should.
Okay, if I could take them quickly.
Yeah. One is, why would there be nutriment in the fine material realm if there's no nose, tongue, or body sensitivity?
I think probably the beings there subsist through a very subtle type of material phenomena. It would not be like the gross food that we sit down and eat at our meal tables, but they might have a very subtle kind of nectar on which they subsist. That would be my guess.
Right. And then finally, are the beings in the fine material realm sentient?
Sentient, certainly in the way of when they're in normal consciousness, then they will be able to see forms, to hear sounds, they can speak, perform actions. I guess they interact with each other. And of course, they interact sometimes with human beings, like the Buddha will visit, and Arahants will visit those realms and speak to the beings there. So certainly they are sentient. Yeah.
Then there's a strange question. I just ask it. Can amoeba be considered as a higher organism?
I didn't catch the question.
Can amoeba be considered as a higher organism?
I've never had occasion to
I
try to test the cognitive capacities of an amoeba.
Do you know you can train an amoeba to run a maze?
Is that really so?
Yes, you really can. Yes. I don't know. Okay. Thank you, Barry. That was all the questions.
Okay, so let us move on. Whoops. Yeah, I'm going to skip over these various classifications of matter and then come to the next. This is the more interesting section. On the 4 modes of production, modes of origin of matter. Okay, so it's said that there are 4 ways in which material phenomena originate: from karma, from mind or consciousness, from temperature, and from nutriment. Okay, so then the text tells us that there are 25 kinds of wholesome and unwholesome karma pertaining to the sense sphere. The 25 kinds of wholesome and unwholesome karma pertaining to the sense sphere and the fine material sphere produce in the internal continuum. And here you see the word santana here. They produce volitionally conditioned material phenomena originating from karma moment by moment, beginning with rebirth linking. So this is what's meant by karma here, is volition from the past, wholesome and unwholesome volition from the past, which produce material phenomena here in the present. And so these 25 kinds of karma, so those are the volitions of 12 unwholesome chittas, the 8 great wholesome chittas of the wholesome chittas of the sense sphere, and then the 5 wholesome chittas of the fine material sphere, the 5 jhana chittas. So these chittas generate karma, and that karma produces material phenomena. The volitions of the immaterial sphere chittas produce rebirth in the immaterial plane, and so they don't produce any material phenomena originating from karma. Okay, so what are the kinds of material phenomena produced by karma? Okay, first, what has to be explained, and which wasn't explained earlier, is that there are 8 types of material phenomena that are called the inseparables, the indispensables, which are always present in all material groups. So what are these 8 inseparables? First, there are the 4 primary elements. I already said that they are inseparable. And then the material groups always have some color or visible form. They always have some odor, though we might not smell them, but at some level, they would give off some odor. They have some taste. So it might be things we would never think of eating, like a piece of glass, but it would have a taste. And the nutritive essence is present in all material phenomena, some capacity to sustain life. So those 8 are the 8 inseparables. Maybe I put that in as a note. I don't see a way to increase the size of this. Anyway, okay, now yeah, the order, I have to say that the order in this manual is a bit defective here. Not my fault, the way it was originally composed. The material phenomena always occur in groups. And there are certain, one group is called the I decad. It's a group of 10 phenomena, 10 material phenomena, in which the most prominent one is the I faculty. So here we have the 8 inseparables are included here. Plus, since this is an organic matter, the life faculty is present. And since it's the I decad, there's I sensitivity. So that is the I decad. And then we have the other 4 sensory decads. We have the ear decad and so on. So all of those have the same, first 9 components are the same.
West Palm Beach County, the school closed.
Oh,
Yeah, some people are talking with their microphones on.
今天是节日啊，
那他是说什么？说以后就 close。
是啊，哦，那他还是害怕。
Ken Gu?
Hello.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we have the ear decad. We have the 8 inseparables, the life faculty, and here we have ear sensitivity. And then the same applies with nose, tongue, and body groups. So these are 5 groups produced by karma. Let's go down to number 17. Okay, so we have the groups originating from karma. So we have the eye decad, then the air decad, nose decad, tongue decad, body decad. Then we have the decad with sexual determination. Either the first 9 factors are the same. All that differs here is that we have the female faculty, and in this one, the male decad, we have the male faculty. Then we have the decad with the heart base. Okay, so in addition to to these, we would have male or female decad. Decad means a group of 10. Then we have the heart decad. So the first 9 are the same. There's no way to color this, I guess. And all that differs is the 10th component, male, female, heart. And then there are some groups in which we have only 9 material phenomena. We don't have a distinctive 10th factor. That's called the vital nonad, vital set of 9. So the 8 inseparables and the life faculty. So these are 9 groups originating from karma. So we have the 5 types of sensory decad. That's 5. The male decad and female decad. Six and 7. The heart decad is 8. And the vital nonad is 9. So those 9 groups originate from karma. Then groups originating from consciousness. So here we have the pure octad, again, the 8 inseparables, together with bodily intimation. That's the movement of the body. So that forms one group of 9 called the bodily intimation nonad. And then when you have speech occurring through vocal intimation, this is called the vocal intimation nonad. I'm sorry. Oh, I see. You have vocal intimation and sound. In this case, there's sound. So you have the vocal intimation decad. So you have the 8 inseparables. Vocal intimation is 9, and sound is the 10th. And then there are other groups with the lightness triad and so on. I don't think we need all of these details. But the important point is that these are the groups that are said to originate from consciousness. So it's consciousness that causes bodily intimation, that causes speech. Then we have the groups originating from temperature. So the pure octad, maybe this is getting into too much nitty details. Anyway, we have some groups originate from temperature, other groups originate from nutriment. Yeah, I think maybe this will be enough for the treatment of material phenomena. Otherwise, we get into too much detail, which would take more time to explain. And maybe it's not so really essential. I would say for practical purposes, we've already covered enough of the material phenomena to serve as a basis for practice. What I think we should do now is just take the short section on Nibbana, and then I can take remaining questions. Okay, so there's a short section here on Nibbana. And first it gives a definition. So it says that Nibbana is first, it is, I use the English word supramundane. The Pali word is lokutara, which might also be translated as world transcending. And this is to be realized by the knowledge of the four noble paths. So we have the paths of stream entry, once returning, non-returning, arhatship. So those path experiences take Nibbana as their object and realize Nibbana. And then Nibbana is also the object, becomes the object of the fruit, the fruition citas. And so Nibbana becomes the object to the paths and the fruits. And then the way the word Nibbana is derived in the Pali tradition, the Pali commentaries, is explained a little, I think I would call this a playful definition rather than a playful derivation rather than a literal derivation. So it's explained as the departure from craving. And craving is said to be an entanglement or a jungle. So the word vana can mean a jungle or a tangle, and nibbana is the escape from that jungle or entanglement. And so therefore it's called nibbana. We could see this maybe more clearly. Yeah, we could see this more clearly in the Sanskrit, where the prefix nir signifies exclusion or rejection, going outside. And vana here is identified with entanglement. And so when you put together the prefix nir with vana to get nirvana, that becomes the rejection of entanglement or the escape from entanglement. And then in Pali, we don't get the combination of R and another consonant. So RV then gets turned into BB. So that's how we get Nibbana. Then we have some comment on this. Yeah, so etymologically correctly, the word Nibbana, or Sanskrit nirvana, is derived from the Pali verb nibbati, or in Sanskrit it would be nirvati, which means to be, instead of a fire, to be blown out, to be extinguished, and refers to the extinguishing of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. But the Pali commentators take it as the departure from the entanglement of craving, or the jungle of craving. And then the text explains that even though Nibbana is one-fold according to its inherent nature, its intrinsic nature, but it's distinguished sometimes into two elements of Nibbana, the element of Nibbana with the residue remaining and the element of Nibbana without residue remaining. And then it's said to be threefold according to the different aspects as being void or empty. This is sunyata, signless or markless, animitta, and desireless, apanihita. And so according to its intrinsic nature, it's single-fold. It's the undifferentiated ultimate reality, exclusively supramundane, the unconditioned, deathless element, which transcends the mundane conditioned world. But even in the sutras, a distinction is made between two elements of Nibbana, the element of Nibbana with the residue remaining, and the element of Nibbana without a residue remaining. The element of Nibbana with a residue remaining, that is the Nibbana as experienced by the Arahants while they're alive. And so the residue is the collection or composite of the five aggregates that had been acquired at birth as a result of past clinging, and that composite of the aggregates remains through the duration of the Arahant's life. So that is the residue of previous clinging that still remains, the composite of the five aggregates. But the Arhat has achieved the extinction of greed, hatred, and delusion. So that Nibbana as experienced by the Arhat is the Nibbana with residue remaining. Then with the passing away of the Arhat, there's no more continuum of experience, of consciousness, of the five aggregates. So the five aggregates comes to an end, and they never arise again. And so there's no longer any residue of past clinging. And that element of Nibbana that's attained by the Arhat with the passing away, that's the element without a residue remaining. And then sometimes in the commentaries, these two elements of Nibbana are called, the element of Nibbana with a residue remaining is called the extinguishing of the defilements, kilesa parinibbana, and the element of Nibbana without any residue remaining is called the extinguishing of the aggregates, or the khandha parinibbana. And then Nibbana is distinguished as threefold according to its special aspects, different aspects. So it can be called emptiness or voidness because it's empty of greed, hatred, and delusion, or because it's empty of everything conditioned. It's called signless because it's free from the signs of greed, hate, and delusion, or it's free from the signs or marks or features of all conditioned things. And then it's called the desireless because it's free from the hankering or insistence of greed, hatred, and delusion. And then the summary verse here says that the great seers who are free from craving declare that Nibbana is a state that is deathless, a chutang. It's ultimate. Here it's translated absolutely endless, but I think better would be ultimate, a chantang. It's unconditioned, the sankatang, and unsurpassed, a nuttarang. And so now at this point, we've completed the exposition of the 4 fundamental actualities of the Abhidharma: Chitta, Chaitasika, Rupa, and Nibbana. Mind or consciousness, the mental factors, material phenomena or physical phenomena, and Nibbana. Okay, so that takes us to the end of chapter 6. And so we could leave the rest of the session for questions.
Thank you, Bhante. There are some questions at the back here. The first one is about the Buddha. Is it possible the Buddha was not completely human? It seems that the Buddha had capabilities beyond the level of a normal human being. This might be a reference to the Mahayana view of the Buddha, but I wonder if you could comment anyway.
I'd say certainly from the standpoint of the early Buddha schools, the Buddha was, of course, it depends on what you mean by being completely human, but he was born and lived as a human being within the scheme of the different classes of beings. He was a human being. So there's a sutta that occurs in the Anguttara Nikaya where the Buddha is sitting under a tree meditating, and a Brahmin comes along and he's seen the Buddha's footprints with the marks of the thousand-spoked wheel, and he's very impressed by the marks of the footprints. Then he comes to the Buddha and he asks, could you be a deva, a deity? The Buddha says, I am not a deva. Could you be I think it's a Gandharva, a celestial musician? The Buddha says, no, I'm not a celestial musician. Could you be a yaksha, a kind of spirit being? No, I'm not a yaksha. Could you be a manusa, a human being? And the Buddha says, no, I'm not a human being. But then when the Brahmin is puzzled, he says, how do you say this? Then the Buddha says, whatever defilements there are that might lead in the future to a future rebirth as a deva, a Gandharva, a yaksha, or a human being, those defilements have been utterly destroyed by me. But the Buddha, that's just a rather unique passage, but otherwise, the Buddha always refers to himself as a manusa, a human being, but not an ordinary human being, but rather acharya manusa, an extraordinary human being, one without a parallel, without a counterpart.
Thank you, Bhante. Is there any reason why sound is not included in the inseparable matter?
I think the reason is that for the ancient formulators of the Abhidharma, they thought that things are not always making sounds. Like I have a pen resting on the desk next to me, and certainly I see that it has a visible form. Yeah, it even does have some odor, a plastic odor. I'm not going to eat it, but I assume if I did, it would have a taste. And maybe the substance could be used as some kind of nutriment for some beings, but it's not making an audible sound. Though my speculation would be a little different from the Abhidharma. I would say that at a certain level, all matter is in a state of vibration. And so it's always making sounds, which might not be audible to us. But if we had a very super sensitive microphone that could pick up the vibrational frequencies of the electrons as they circle the nucleus of the atoms, or the subatomic particles as they interact with each other, probably it would be extremely noisy down there at that level.
Could you comment on the inclusion of nutritive essence in all the decades? Does that mean one could live off sense input in some way? Live off sense input. Is that implying that sense input is somehow nutritive?
I don't think that's the intention, because nutritive essence in the classification of material phenomena, nutritive essence is different from, say, visible forms, sounds, odors, or tastes. But I think the idea here is that all matter can in some way serve to contribute to, can serve as a factor of nutrition. Like maybe if we living in the age before plastic and and things like that, you could think of people observing the way even stones break down and becomes part of the soil. And then the soil is what enables the plants to grow. And so they would conjecture that something is passing from the pulverized stone into the soil, which then passes into the plants and then serves as nutriment for living beings. And so in that way, they would come to the conclusion that all matter has some kind of capacity to sustain life as nutritive essence. That would be my guess.
There's a related question here, actually. It says, is it possible that food for beings in fine material realms is their jhana? A bit like this. That's what they're feeding off.
That idea could be expressed metaphorically. Like even I know within the Chinese tradition, there's a chant which goes, may you have joy for your food and meditation for your nutrition, something like that. But I believe in the fine material realm, there's a kind of material nutrition also. I think that might be dealt with in one of the sections that we passed over.
Right.
Yeah, anyway, I think the occurrence of material phenomena in the sensuous world. Oh, in the fine material realm. It says that the decads of nose, tongue, body, sex, and the material groups produced by nutriment are not found there. But I don't know, there's a point I'm not so sure about.
Thank you, Bhante. Can you elaborate a bit more on how the heart base works with consciousness and mental factors? What is the heart base in terms of Chitta and Chittasika?
I guess we would say that the heart base functions as a physical support for the great majority of chittas and mental factors in an analogous way to the way the I serves as the base for I consciousness and the mental factors associated with I consciousness. It's just seen that these states of mind need a physical organ to serve as their support. So in the case of I consciousness, the I provides the physical support for those states of consciousness. In the case of the ear consciousness, it is the ear sensitivity that serves as the material support for ear consciousness and the associated mental factors. And so they would have conjectured, the formulators of the Abhidharma, that the mind element and mind consciousness element also need some kind of physical organ to serve as their material support. And in that case, they conjecture that it is the heart base that functions as that physical organ.
Thank you, Bhante. Could we now turn to questions on Nirvana? What is meant by the word element, as in Nibbana element? Is that just the four factors, Chitta, Chittasika, Rupa, and Nirvana? Is that what the word element means?
I think the word element it's derived in Pali from the verb dhareti, which means to support. So it's something that we say has some actual existence, as opposed to things that are purely conceptual, purely ideational. So Nibbana is called, the word is dhatu, element maybe doesn't correspond exactly to it. So we have to search for an English word to render dhatu. So early translators chose the word element, and I followed their example. But dhatu is something that, let us say, that has some kind of actual existence, as opposed to something which is purely conceptual, a purely mental fabrication. And in that case, the 4 primary elements are called dhatus. The consciousness, different types of consciousness are called dhatus, and the Nibbana is called a dhatu.
It just seems strange because, in a sense, that places Nirvana on the same plane as the great elements, as if it's another element, whereas it's presumably not. It's meant to be different.
Of course, it's different in many, many respects,
Yes.
but the way it's similar to the others in being an element is that it is an actual existent, a reality, and not just a purely conceptual fabrication.
Thank you, Bhante. In fact, there's a related question here. It says, is Nibbana mind or matter or both?
No, it's not
Neither.
We have the 4 fundamentals: mind or chitta, mental factors, physical form, material form, and then Nibbana is the 4th, not mind, not mental factor, not a material phenomena, but it's a distinct reality.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhante. Could Bhante discuss the non-manifestive consciousness with which Arahants and Buddhas view and act in the world?
Yeah, this refers to an expression used in a rather obscure verse that occurs in the Digha Nikaya, and also part of the verse in the Majjhima Nikaya. Vijnanang anidasanang anantang sabato pabang. Okay, that there is even the meaning of this term anidasana is disputed. So some translators, I think I follow this, use non-manifesting. Others use invisible. So it's an invisible or non-manifesting consciousness, which is said to be anantang, without any limit, without any boundaries, and sabato pabang, which is luminous or radiant on all sides. And it's here that the 4 elements get no footing. And here where all sort of conceptual distinctions have ceased. And there are many different, or at least several different interpretations of this. My own personal interpretation is that this is the consciousness of the Arhat in the fruition attainment, that is the meditative absorption in which the Arhat is directly experiencing Nibbana. It's not their consciousness in which they go about their ordinary activities, but it's the consciousness of the Nibbanic meditative absorption. That's my interpretation.
Thank you, Bhante.
But it's an obscure verse, which nobody really knows exactly what it means.
And then final question. These 4 elements or four parts of the analysis, is there continuity / connection from Chitta to Chittasika and from Rupa to Nirvana? Is there a significant link between them? Can you analyze the 4 in that way, like Chitta, Chittasika, Rupa, Nirvana, or is that not an appropriate way of trying to pass the 4?
Yeah, I wouldn't go about it in that way. The Chitta maybe is taken as a starting point, because the whole sort of system of classification in the Abhidharma takes citta as the foundation for distinguishing the different realms of existence. And then we see what are the kinds of cittas that occur within each of those realms. So the citta is the starting point. And then to see what constitutes a citta, then you distinguish it into its component mental factors. So that's why mental factors comes after citta. And then the third one would be rupa, since rupa is, from the Abhidharmic perspective, it's subsidiary to the concern with citta and ceitasikas. Of course, the Abhidharma is part of Buddhism, and Buddhism is concerned with the understanding and development primarily of the mind, not of understanding the physical world or material world. So rupa comes third because it's of secondary importance to mind and mental factors. Then nibbana comes fourth, not because it's of fourth importance, but because it is that which completely transcends all conditioned things. And so first you have to analyze and understand the nature of conditioned reality, and then you have some basis for at least getting a glimpse of the unconditioned reality, which is beyond everything conditioned.
Thank you, Bhante. That completes our questions. If you wish to make an offering to Bhante, I have posted BuddhistGlobalRelief.org link in the chat box, as you can see from me to everyone. And it only falls to me now to offer Bhante an offer from all of us, and to suggest that all of us make a bow to Bhante in great thanks for his wonderful teachings over these last 3 days. So please, everyone, do this, at least in your mind. Obviously, Bhante can't see us bowing. And with that, we'll sign off for today.
Before I could do that, so we just mentioned that we still have several more chapters to complete.
We posted, Bhante, the next sessions in the chat box.
Yeah, and we didn't fix a date for chapter 9, the last chapter. Can we do that the first Saturday in December?
Yeah, I'm sure we could. Bhante, if we correspond together,
okay,
we can agree a time that works for you, and we will then post that. Those early weeks in December are fine, but let's not do it live. We might make a mistake.
Okay.
Let's do it by email, and then we'll in October the 9th, we'll announce the final 2 sessions. One is on November the 13th, and then there will be a final one in December, as you suggest.
Yeah, and then the file that I sent you yesterday on the 4 functions of karma, I heard that some people didn't get it because it went through rather quickly through chat. If I send it to you by email, could you then share it by email with
yes,
people?
We will mail it to all participants.
Okay, thank you. So that would.
So thank you again, Bhante, and may I make a second bow to you.